Please help me welcome Chen. Jamie, wow. I think you are very fortunate to have someone who is so passionate, so dedicated to your education. There's a Chinese, we are in Chinese language call our teachers as a master and also as a example. And I think he fulfills all these two requirements brilliantly. And he has been, we have been working on this particular event, particular moment for a year or so. And it's amazing. It has come to this moment now, and I'm tremendously honored to be here, looking at you guys. You guys are such a good-looking group.
Thank you.
From a distance. Don't gesture words, right? Talk about fatherhood. I'm holding a bamboo flute here, and I'm not like professionally trained like some of you guys. I didn't go to Juilliard or Chinese Juilliard, but I play this flute because it came from my childhood. I grew up in a very small village, as some of you have read my memoir. Growing up in this tiny little village off Chinese coast, southeastern part of it, and if you would know the shape of Chinese map actually looks like sort of look like a turkey or a bold turkey, and Beijing, the capital, will be at the neck, near the neck. Shanghai, the largest city in China, will be at this turkey's chest, facing the Pacific Ocean. Where I came from, Fujian province, is somewhere near that wrinkly belly button, and that's where I came from, the belly button of China. That's why I look like this. And you don't want to know where Hong Kong is actually. It's further south, yeah. I know you're a fun group of people. Let's go out sometime, man. Let's go. And so this old man, he grew very fine knuckle bamboos in his backyard and began to and then cut them seasonably, and then hung them onto the ceilings for them to dry before he could carve the holes in it. And this is a bamboo flute, and so my father, and I still remember that magic moment when I walked into his studio and the flutes were making a beautiful dance, hitting each other, because the breeze was blowing through the windows. And my father paid 75 francs, which is about 10 pennies in US dollars, and bought me the smallest flute he could afford. And then he taught me how to play a repertoire of Chinese music that he had learned from his father, and his father had learned from his father. The way culture, history, and music, folklores were handed down from one generation to another. Every single one of us is a keeper of our culture, our history. And so, and I tell you, this simple thing, not this very flute, but the bamboo flute salvaged my childhood. And once I began to play the music and letting it travel across the green fields, reaching the far mountains, I suddenly felt that I was no longer alone, isolated, living in this desolate village. I felt that I became a part of humanity. And now that my father passed away, and no matter where I go, I always seem to have brought a flute with me. So it points to the very essence of why one write. I write because I actually, the first intention of writing Colors of Mountain was to have have our children have a chronicle of where I come from. And my narrative is part of their narrative. If they do not know my narrative, they do not know their own narrative fully, completely. And what is a narrative? Everybody lives a narrative. You do, I do, and narrative is your path. Once you figure out what your narrative is, you will find out what your motivation is and where you're going. And that's very important. But I came to write, now that I'm at this age, and I look back, and I begin to realize that for anyone, there's a particular moment, a particular incident, a particular thing, a particular word, phrase, book, that destines one to be who he or she is, and destines one to do what he does. And examine your life that way. Why are you this way? Why do you like to read books? Why you just feel passionately about a particular spot? And or you feel passionately about particular predicaments of humanity? And there's a reason. There's an underlying, we all live above and under current. And in Chinese language, we call that Di Hua, a earthly flower, earthly blossom that lifts you up. Well, every single one of us lives above one of those. It's like the cloud that lifts you up. And what is it? What is the color of it? And so my moment in my life that destined me to do what I do came when I was 9 years old. Our family, in 1949, had owned about 60% of the farming land in that little village. And then that year, 1949, the Red Army traveled all the way from the north, all the way to the south, to our village. When they got to the village, a general pointed a gun at my grandfather's head and said, "You turn in, give me the deeds to all these land holdings, otherwise I'm going to shoot you." And my grandfather was smart. He was a drunken poet. And he said, "Take it, I don't care, just take it." But my three great uncles were not so smart. They are my grandmother's brothers. They resist the same gun pointing general, and they got shot in their head, each one dying seconds within each other, and their brain and blood splashing all over the walls of my grandmother's childhood or ancestral home. Several years ago, I went back to that dilapidated house just to go there. And I tell you, that was like years and years ago, but I stood there I could still feel the ghost of these young grand-uncles whose life were stunted. They took our land that year, and we became the pariah in a little village. It just gave us a political label and condemned us. So we were the sort of the enemy, public enemy of the entire village. And I didn't know that. I was a big-headed, skinny boy. I had no idea what politics was. I would just live my life and mind my own business. And the communist government drove away or killed these missionaries who were there. And then they turned this beautiful church into a communist headquarters. This is where torture happened all the time. And it's where communist leaders making their swarthy speeches, wearing guns and talking from the podium, where a pastor would be delivering sermons on Sundays or Saturdays. And then so I ran. So the great thing is, and now I reflect back on what, now there are about 500 million Christians in China. China is going to be the biggest Christian country in the world because of the seed planted by those who had come to China about a century or so ago, and doing good. The seeds of goodness, of grace, embedded into Chinese consciousness, and they accept it. And so what makes America great is that we have always been able to do good for this world, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Being able to bring good stuff to the world is what defines us as a great nation. And I ran because there was big torture happening in the communist headquarters. I ran, and like I was a rambunctious dog. I climbed all the way to the top of this window, and I was looking through the broken window, and I saw men. All the village's children were there, hanging all over the windows like monkeys. And communist leaders were down there, and they were pointing at the guy. And there was a guy being hung by both thumbs to the ceiling, his feet barely touching the ground. And 5 young militiamen were beating the heck out of this guy with the rifle butts. The man was crying. And I don't know whether you have ever heard of a grown-up person, may he be a man or she be a lady, a grown-up person really crying in desperation as if nobody was listening. And it was the most devastating. The word mournful was, to me, created for such an emotion that invades you once you hear that kind of a guttural and from the soul, that kind of crying because he was dying. But then, after a few more rounds of beating and people shouting, the man crying, the rope that hung this man swiveled over, and I saw my father's face. And that very second, it was a blue-skied summer day. The sun was still shining, but a tone darkened, like an eclipse. And the world was still noisy. People were pointing their fingers at me now, saying, "That's your dad. He's a bad guy. He's going to die." See, everything was muted, and yet I could decipher the words uttered and spoken. And all of a sudden, I was assaulted by 1,000 emotions I hadn't felt before. On top of everything, sadness, shame, bitterness, and it was just, and I wanted to throw up, and I think I passed out very momentarily, first time in my life. And I almost let slip my hands. But then I quietly climbed down from the window down to the ground like a spineless spider. How I wish I could be a real Spider-Man and broke into the windows and kicked some serious ass then. But I couldn't. I was weak. I was docile. I was fainting. For the first time, I felt dizzy, and I ran home. Right there, wow, I do my quick-footed run to home, right there under this sheltering blue sky. I became a man. And when I went home to my mother was crying. That's all she knows to do. Two things, crying and then praying to her Buddha, her God, someone above her. And she said, well, the reason why your dad was taken was because that day he had received a package from my uncle, his only brother, who had been living in Taiwan. And Taiwan was an ally of USA. And therefore, my father was labeled as an American spy. Was taken to be beaten like that. And even though he died years and years and years later, but that was my father's first death in my eyes. And the great thing about humanity is that my heart grew fonder for my father. And I came to love my father and my mother more, not less. Came to be more proud of him rather than ashamed. I know that my father wasn't a bad guy. And that simple, fleeting moment, is the reason why I do what I do. I write books. I write books because these tales were forbidden to be told. The Chinese government doesn't like what I do. My memoirs came out. I got letters from the government telling me to tone down, especially in my TV and radio interviews. And I have a friend who told me that he stopped writing for Washington Post. They sometimes ask me to write some opinions on their weekend edition or Outlook, their weekend magazine. And because this is the first newspaper that the ambassador from China will pick up and read. But even as we speak, there are millions and millions of kids of rightful ages dodge bullets, landmines, cannons, death, to rush to their schoolhouse that might or might not be there when they get there. For what? To get educated. You are the chosen ones. And being chosen has two things going for you. First of all, you're the prince and the princess of the world. And later on, we want you to be the heroes of your age, of your era. Because this world, even as we speak, is in pretty bad shape. So you guys who have been getting the best education, wearing the best clothes, eating the most wonderful food, do you know just the concept of dieting? No Ethiopians diet, you know. They don't need to diet, they're skinny enough already. I was skinny enough already until I get to America. My first meal in America, my professor, who took a perverse interest in seeing how this skinny boy can eat, how much can he eat, he took me to American Kentucky Fried Chicken in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he bought a family-size drumsticks just for me. And I started eating, and I was like 10 drumsticks into it, and I looked up from my bucket, and I say, how many legs do chickens have in America? I seem to consume all the legs of the chickens. Because in China, when I was growing up, our family was giving only 1 pound of pork. Not giving the pork, but giving a piece of paper that's called meat coupons. Coupons, yeah. And you take that coupon, get up very early to go line up at the communist butcher. You know, again, sweaty, salty guy, greasy hair, and then by the time you get there, all the meat will be sold already. So you have to come out the next day, and my mother always asked me to buy the pork fat rather than lean meat because we couldn't afford to eat that. Pork fat, we can reduce them into fat and then saute the vegetables with the drizzle And so now I'm really blessed to be able to do this, supported by the Random House, to write whatever I write. And the simple fact that we are here, gathering here together, you invite someone who is controversial or provocative to talk to you about anything that I want to talk to you about. This is in a very uncontrolled way. This very fact that we gather, our free will being exercised, is a celebration of our great freedom. Because in China, if I were invited to a school, first of all, I have to be fact-checked and to be background checked and to make sure, and they'll give you a list of things that you shouldn't say. You know, I like sometimes if I stay up late enough, I'll catch a little bit of a David Letterman or Jay Leno or Conan O'Brien, those guys, and see them making fun of our presidents and former presidents, our governors, whoever they make fun of, and you think nothing of it, you laugh them off. But if you do that as a TV personality of that stature, and you make fun of your president in China, you're going to be gone faster than Conan O'Brien. And you're not going to get cabled. And you're going to get cabled to some prison and you'll die. And I come to the conclusion, that actually explains why for generations, there are no real funny Chinese at all. Because we cannot afford to be funny. We're too afraid to be funny. Funny is expensive, funny costs money, funny takes a lot. So we live in this greatest land, and I really, I'm the most grateful for this country, to this country for allowing me to be who I want to be a writer, and allow me to tell the stories that were not to be told. And I thank you for reading my books. You made me, I didn't make my father tremendously proud that I could be here sharing this particular moment with you. And to show you how much I cherish what I do and love what I do, I have to say that at this very particular moment, I'd rather be here with you guys than be with anyone else or be elsewhere. And that is how much I like being a writer. Because this is exactly what I enjoy doing. And without passion, one can never be successful in whatever you do. So go find out what matters in your life the most, and find that thing to augment your talent. And go out there, not just work for yourself, work to make this world a better place. Because by doing so, you're going to be so exponentially more blessed. It's all about what can you do.